की जय, श्रील भविष्य वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथ दास बाबूजी महाराज की जय, श्री गौरी वेदांत आचार्य श्री भूषण प्रभु की जय, श्री विश्वनाथ चक्रवर्ती ठाकुर की जय, श्री नाथम श्रीनिवास श्रवणानंद प्रभु की जय, श्री कृष्णदास कविराज गोस्वामी प्रभु की जय, श्री रूप सनातन भक्त रघुनाथ श्री गोपाल भक्तदास रघुनाथ गोस्वामी प्रभु की जय, ईश्वर दामोदर रॉय रामानंद श्री गोपाल श्रीविंद की जय, नमाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय, प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री द्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासुदेव गौर भक्तवृंद की जय, श्री आदिदेव मायापुर श्री मातादेव कद्युमजी भक्तदेव कौलदेव पतिदेव जानदेव मोतीदेव जी बुद्धदेव पावन कृष्ण नामदेव की जय, श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपी गोवर्धन वरसपनाम कृष्ण व्रजमंडल की जय, श्री श्याम कुंज राधा कुंज यमुना गंगा तुलसी भक्ति देव की जय, योगमाया पूर्णमासी की जय, गोपीश्वर महादेव की जय, जगन्नाथ बलदेव सुभद्रा शिव संशय की जय, श्री पुरुषोत्तम चैत्रधाम की जय, सिंह भगवान की जय, भक्त प्रकाश श्री प्रहलाद महाराज की जय, ग्रंथराज श्रीमद भागवतम की जय, श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय, श्रीवास पांडित ठाकुर की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय, समगत भक्त वृंद की जय, निताय गौर प्रेमानंदी हरि हरि बोल.
Isn't it tomorrow? Shiva's talking. Ah, okay. Okay. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanasalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurudev Namah. Mukam karoti vachalam bhangam langayati girim yat kripa tamaham bande Shri Gurun dinataranam. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Namo Mahabhadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Tvishe Nama Nityanandam Namastubhyam Prem Ananda Pradayane Kalo Kalmasha Nashaya Janava Pataye Namaha. Bande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityanando Sahodito Gaudo Daye Pushpavanto Chitro Shamdo Tamonudo Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam. Hey Krishna, Karuna Sindho, Dina Bandho Jagatpate, Gopesha Gopika Kanta, Radha Kanta Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Brindai Tulsi Debai Priyai Keshavasya Cha Krishna Bhakti Prade Devi Satyavachai Namo Namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. My unlimited Dandavat pranams, my Shraddha Pushpanjali, at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Gurudev, Nitya Lila Pravishta, Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa, Ashtatara Sata Sri Srila, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada. Then my same unlimited Dandavat pranams, Shraddha Pushpanjali, at the lotus feet of my most worshipable beloved Siksha Gurudevs, Nitya Lila Pravishta, Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa, Ashtatara Sata Sri Srila, Bhakti Rakshak, Sridhar Goswami Maharaj, and Nitya Lila Pravishta, Om Vishnu Pad Paramahansa, Ashtatara Sata Sri Srila, Bhakti Vedanta Narayana Goswami Maharaj. And my Dandavat pranams to the lotus feet of all of my Sri Rupa Nuga Guru Varga. And my Dandavat pranams to all the Vaishnavas and to all the Vaishnavis. Such a wonderful preface. How do you like this preface of Srila Prabhupada's?
It's amazing.
Isn't
Yes.
it? Thank you. Yes. Okay. I think we left off. A human being engaged in Krishna consciousness, even if unable to complete the course of Bhakti Yoga, takes birth in the higher divisions of human society so that he can automatically further his advancement in Krishna consciousness. Is that what happened to you, KK?
I don't know.
Huh? I do.
I got lucky.
Yes. A human being engaged in Krishna consciousness, even if unable to complete the course of Bhakti Yoga, takes birth in the higher divisions of human society so that he can automatically further his advancement in Krishna consciousness. Isn't that a wonderful arrangement? If we didn't have that arrangement, what hope would there be? Right? So some are a little bit further along because they already took birth in this very life, or even a previous life, or even a previous life in a devotee family. But these samskaras, they're necessary. They're necessary to acquire. So we're happy that we can be in the devotee family of jivas, because every single jiva who is coming to this movement is a devotee of Krishna. We don't know their previous lives, but Krishna does, and he is making the arrangement and sending them at different stages of each jiva's development, and also arranging guru, sadhu sangha, everything. So we should always know that when someone comes who's new, they're just coming out of the grip of Maya in that particular life. We have to know this fact. This is not their first life. This should be completely 100% cemented in our mind and intelligence. Never ever to look at any jiva who's coming with open mood, interest, and attraction and all of that is not their first life. They could have been very great yogis in a previous life, or any background. We don't know But one thing we do know, and this is stated in so many places throughout Prabhupada's books, that how they come to the movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to the movement of Krishna Bhakti in this life, it has a connection with the previous life, no doubt about it.
What to speak of the children?
Yeah, that's kind of like the graduate level, Maybe even postgraduate, we don't know. They may have gone to a much higher level, or they're going in this life. We don't know. One thing I do know, which is very interesting, like Hannes Maharaj was telling this to me, he's in touch with Budara Prabhu quite a bit. And Budara Prabhu, Budara said he's looked at all the charts of all these children, that we have. And he says, they're off the charts. They're just amazing. Like, he never sees those kind of charts anywhere else. So that's pretty good praman and evidence. So, the whole purpose is so that they can automatically further their advancement in Krishna consciousness. Therefore, all bona fide activities in Krishna consciousness are amrita. What does that mean? Permanent. Two meanings, remember? Amrita, immortal or permanent, and amrita also means nectar. So Prabhupada's making the point that all of the bona fide activities in Krishna consciousness are amrita. Why? Because of everything that he just explained in our class yesterday. We heard, how if our body at present is engaged in the activities of Krishna consciousness, then it is guaranteed that we will have at least a human body in our next life. A human being engaged in Krishna consciousness, then I read that already. So, now we're going on. This eternal engagement in bhakti rasa. Why is he saying that? Because he's talking about the activities of bhakti and how the attraction for the activities of bhakti, the process of bhakti, everything leads one to the Amrita platform, the eternal platform. So this eternal engagement in bhakti rasa can be understood by a serious student upon studying the nectar of devotion. Adoption of bhakti rasa, or Krishna consciousness, will immediately bring one to an auspicious life, free from anxieties, and it will bless one with transcendental existence, thus minimizing the value of liberation. Here, Prabhupada has referred to, in the same sentence, adoption of bhakti rasa, or Krishna consciousness. Because that is the meaning of Krishna consciousness. And for those who don't know, there's a verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna bhakti rasa bhavita mati, which was uttered by Ramananda Roy at the request of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And in this verse, the word bhakti rasa is there. Krishna bhakti rasa, not just bhakti rasa, but Krishna bhakti rasa bhavita mati. Kriyatam api kutopi labhyate. Tatra lolyam api mulyam ekalam janma koti sukritaya na labhyate. So Srila Prabhupada, he said, I have named my movement International Society for Krishna Consciousness after this verse. Because the first line says Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavita Mati. It means the consciousness, the intelligence of relishing and tasting Krishna Bhakti Rasa. It's all about tasting. Krishna Bhakti Rasa, Bhavitamati. He said, that first line, I have named my movement Krishna Consciousness. Because consciousness means bhavita mati, the tendency, the intelligence to perform Krishna Bhakti and taste Krishna Bhakti Rasa. So what is the translation of that verse? Krishna Bhakti Rasa bhavita mati. This attraction, this development toward Krishna Bhakti Rasa, kriyatam api kutopi labhyate. He says one should immediately purchase that if it is available for purchase. It's such a valuable commodity. How valuable? Janma koti sukritayar na labhyate. Even in millions of lives, janma koti means millions. Actually means 10 million. Even in Janma Koti, even in 10 million lives, Sukritayar na labhyate. From activities of Sukriti, it's not attainable. Even through previous lives, millions of lives of Sukriti, it's not available. But how can it be obtained? Tatra lolyam apimulyam ekalam. This is the root, the mulya, the root cause, and the only way that it can be obtained. Tatralolyam apimulyam ekalam. Ekalam means one. The only one way by which it can be attained is what? Lolyam. The greed to have it. This is so important to understand. We are actually beggars. Devotees are beggars. They're coming to beg. You look at the songs of all of our acharyas, they're begging. And they're anticipating, oh when, kabhi, kabhi, kabhi. Right? Because it's not available to anyone who does not have the greed to have it. But if someone has the greed, then it becomes available. And that greed does not necessarily arise from millions of sukritis and millions of lives. How does it arise?
By association with the sadhus.
Okay, and how do we know that? Where's the praman, the evidence for that? Where's the evidence that tells that this greed, you can only get it in one way? It's the only thing that can give you Krishna Bhakti Rasa, but also there's only one way to have that. You just said it. The association of Rasik Vaishnavas, who are relishing that Krishna Bhakti Rasa. Now, where's the praman, the evidence for that? There's a book Gurudev has presented to us from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur called Rag Vartma Chandrika. And there it is clearly stated by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur that this greed will only arise either from previous life's association with such Rasik Vaishnavas or this life. So imagine that there is a society of devotees in Lord Chaitanya's movement. There's so many different societies. And the only reason, the only aspiration is that they will become pure devotees one day. But the only way by which they can become pure devotees and begin to become eligible to taste Krishna Bhakti Rasa and to have greed for that is by the association of such devotees who have that. So imagine the tragedy of a society of such devotees rejecting such a person's association. Can you imagine? It's unimaginable, but it happens. Why? Because of the desire for labh, puja, and pratishta. That is the culprit. And that is coming because of previous anarthas. So those who are still in the stage of being very much entangled and hampered by anarthas, they absolutely must associate with superior Vaishnavas. That's the only way. So, going on. Generally, neophyte devotees are anxious to see Krishna or God, but God cannot be seen or known by our present, materially blunt senses. There is a verse. Sarvopadi vinirmuktam tatparatina nirmanam. No, Sarvopadi vinirmuktam. No, there's another verse that actually has the term blunt senses in it. I'm forgetting now. Anyway, I'll remember. I missed this sentence here. Bhakti rasa itself is sufficient to produce a feeling of liberation. A feeling of liberation. That's a special kind of feeling, is it not? To feel I'm on the pathway of liberation. Very uplifting feeling. No one can feel that if they're entangled in material sense gratification of this world, exploitation, you know. But here he's saying that bhakti rasa itself is sufficient to produce a feeling of liberation because it attracts the attention of the Supreme Lord Krishna. Generally, the neophyte devotees are anxious to see Krishna or God, but God cannot be seen or known by our present, materially blunt senses. We have to have an image of this in our minds. We all are equipped with these senses that this body has. But the soul, which is the driving force of this body, also has the original spiritual senses. Because every jivatma is endowed with the spiritual senses, just like Krishna is. Just like that verse, Absolute is sentient, thou hast proved. Absolute has senses. That's why we have senses. But these senses are called materially blunt senses. They cannot perceive transcendental reality. But when the transcendental reality is pleased, Sevon mukhehi jivado swayam eva spuratyada. That's the verse. Sevon mukata. When the senses have been drenched in the mood of service. That means your hearing, seeing, touching, tasting, smelling, everything is linked, dovetailed, as Prabhupada likes to use, to Krishna's senses through service. Sevan mukata. Sevan mukhehi jivado, beginning with the tongue. Jivado. Then swayam eva spuratyada. Swayam eva means he himself, Krishna, his name, his form. This is the verse. Atak Shri Krishna navadi navaved grahyam indriyai. There we go. Grahyam indriyai means blunt material senses. So they're covering our spiritual senses. These material senses are a covering of our original spiritual senses. Otherwise we wouldn't have these senses. So every single jiva in every single species of life, they have the sense, they have all the senses. And then they have a particular set of senses in that particular species of body, where they're, to one extent or another, they're able to exercise their seeing. Can a tree see? Can a tree smell? Can a tree taste? Can a tree feel? Does it have a sense of touch? Yeah. Can it hear? So here's the thing. In each species, look at the animals, dogs, they have ears. They actually have the organ, ears. They have a nose. They have a tongue. They have the sense of touch. All these things are there. But in the lower species, you don't visibly see a nose on a tree, or a certain part of the tree which is the what do you call it, the organ for the sense of smell. But yet those senses are there in that tree, in that body, but they're limited, very, very limited. As the jiva becomes more and more distant from the Lord and gets bodies awarded that are in the immovable species of life, there's Stavara and Jangama. Stavara means they're immovable. They can't move. And Jangama means they can move. So all the different species are divided into those two categories. That's why the tree species is like a punishment for the jiva, to just stand. Now, their awareness is there. They have awareness. They certainly do. It's even been proven in different types of experiments. Prabhupada used to be with this Dr. Bosch, and he's famous throughout the world for doing different experiments with plants. And I can refer to, I think even in more recent times, they played different types of music for plants. Did you ever hear about that? Remember what they told?
I think they just had studies where they can tell that plants feel pain and have emotions.
Yeah. Okay, so like with music, they played very extreme heavy metal music, that type of stuff. And the plants all started to grow in a kind of, strange way. But then they changed it to very soothing music, like classical music and so forth. And the trees just flourished. Or not the trees, but the plants, they flourished. So they've done lots of different experiments like this. So the thing is that God cannot be seen or known by our present materially blunt senses. But the process of devotional service, as it is recommended in the Nectar of Devotion, it will gradually elevate one from the material condition of life to the spiritual status, wherein the devotee becomes purified of all designations. That's where we ended yesterday. And the senses can then become uncontaminated, being constantly in touch with bhakti rasa. So that's when bhakti rasa, when one is engaged in the process of bhakti, then bhakti rasa itself begins to cause everything to happen and purify the senses and perception, everything from bhakti rasa. Nothing else is needed. And when the purified senses are employed, the purified senses are employed in the service of the Lord, then one becomes situated in bhakti rasa life. And any action performed for the satisfaction of Krishna in this transcendental bhakti rasa stage of life can be relished perpetually. See, Prabhupada was trying to make this point. This experience is amrita. It's immortal, it's eternal. It never ends. But all material engagements end. So, when one is thus engaged in devotional service, all varieties of rasas or mellows turn into eternity. I'm going to have you repeat this sentence. When one is thus engaged in devotional service, all varieties of rasas or mellows turn into eternity. Isn't that a quite profound sentence? In the beginning, one is trained according to the principles of regulation under the guidance of the acharya or spiritual master, and gradually when one is elevated, devotional service becomes automatic and spontaneous eagerness to serve Krishna. There it is. You have to do that in the beginning. Regulated. Under the guidance of the acharya. And then gradually when one is elevated, devotional service becomes automatic and spontaneous eagerness to serve Krishna. That's called Rag Anuga Bhakti. There are 12 kinds of rasas. Did you know that? Did you know that there are 12 kinds of rasas? Yes? Did you know that or not?
Yeah, I just forget what they are.
Okay, but you know that there's 12. Did you know that, Yala?
Yeah.
Right. So they're divided into two categories. Testing you all. You know that there's 12. Yeah.
Primary and secondary.
How many of each?
5 and 7.
That's correct. 5, what? Primary. And 7? Secondary. That's important to know because there are these 12 rasas, and this is quite an amazing philosophical truth. Rasa tattva. It begins with this. There are 12 rasas. Does it say anywhere that there's 13, 15, 8? No, it doesn't. In all the authorized literatures, it has divided this. This is what Mahaprabhu taught to Rupa Goswami, that there are 12 rasas. 5 primary, 7 secondary. Without the 5 primary rasas, the 7 secondary rasas will not manifest. But in the material condition of life, there is a similar perverted reflection of this manifesting of rasas. Let's take, for example, Madhurya rasa. In the material world, Madhurya rasa means a relationship between man and woman. It means conjugal love, like that. But it's perverted, of course. It's not even comparable to the original, but it resembles that. So, any of these rasas, whether it's friendship, parental, any of them, they're all actually in the category of reflections, perversions of the original. The original does exist, otherwise these would not exist. So, when someone gets married, then they start relishing together the 7 secondary rasas. Like what, for example?
Ghastliness.
Ghastliness. Yeah. How do they relish ghastliness? How do people in the material world relish ghastliness?
When you're confined with a cellmate, and you have to put up with one another's madness, then it's ghastly.
Maybe, but actually ghastly, we know what that rasa is because there is a whole section of cinematography that especially specializes in horror. And that's become quite popular nowadays. Horror movies. That you see something that frightens you like anything and makes you almost, well actually bibhatsa means disgust. That's another one of the 7 secondary rasas, bibhatsa.
Roller coasters also.
Roller coasters.
You ever go on a roller coaster and you're about to go to the top and then zoom down?
Well, that's different. That's bhayanaka. That's fear. Fear is different than dread or ghastliness. Okay. But comedy is one of the 7 secondary rasas. Jai Shishi Guru Gauranga Radha Govinda Ki Jai. Everybody likes comedy. And it's originally there to the supreme degree. In the supreme taster of all rasas, Krishna. That's why his Braj Leelas and so forth, they're all so sweet and entertaining because all of these rasas are going on apparently like in Narvat Leela, in human-like pastimes, right? Apparently. And they're simple, but it's bhakti rasa. The relish of that, those who become attached and attracted towards the Leelas of Krishna, Srimati Radhika, Braj Leela, all of these pastimes, they're tasting a very, very special sweetness of bhakti rasa. Even in the very beginning, but it's different. Because we've even experienced it directly. Reading Krishna book. There's no comparison when you read other fictional literatures and so forth to the feeling that one experiences in hearing the pastimes of Krishna compared to the ordinary. There's quite a difference and one can notice that. And the thing about it is that you become purified. But with the other, you become more contaminated. More materially engrossed. That's why Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he has one song that he himself wrote about his, he calls it Vidyare Vilas. Vilas means like pastimes of vidya, knowledge in the material world. And he talks all about there how he never was able to relish anything in that attempt to acquire vidya, knowledge. He tells his own story. But when one hears the simple pastimes of Krishna, any parts of Srimad Bhagavatam, anything, completely different experience and emotion. So, yeah. So there are 12 kinds of rasas, as will be explained in this book. And by renovating, here he uses the word renovate. Renovate what? Our relationship with Krishna. It's there. It needs renovation. Just like when you go into a broken down house, right? And the builders, the carpenters, they come in, they look, okay, we're going to do this. Then they start ripping out all the old stuff and they start, repainting, rewiring, do everything. That's called renovation. So Prabhupada is using an interesting word here. That by renovating our relationship with Krishna in 5 primary rasas, then we can live eternally in full knowledge and bliss. We can live eternally. That's what we have to do. Nobody wants to not live eternally, right? If anybody was asked, do you want to just die and then not live anymore? Or would you rather live eternally in full joy and happiness? Is there any person alive, human being, that would ever say no? Is it? Is that possible? Never. But because they're deluded by the material energy, the Maya potency, they're not directing their energies towards that. That's what bhakti means. Being fully focused. This is why Srila Gurudev, when he would come, he would say that in order for you to successfully engage yourself in these activities of bhakti, you have to first do one thing. You have to fix your goal. And it's only when you fix your goal that you will be able to then determine what process you'll have to follow to attain that goal. So I see here how Prabhupada has weaved his presentation into making it so clear that this is the goal. Renovate our relationship with Krishna in 5 primary rasas, and we can live eternally in full knowledge and full bliss. So now he goes on, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, there's 5 more paragraphs in this preface. Each one of them is unbelievable. Now, the basic principle of the living condition is that we have a general propensity to love someone. Is that not the basic principle? Yes, it is. We have a general propensity to love someone. If you want to really examine the activities of the human beings, it's always, in the background, there is always this desire, this tendency to love someone. Yes. So that's the basic principle of the living condition. No one can live without loving someone else. You know, Srila Gurudev presented this very point in a very interesting way. I told this story before, but you may not remember it. When Gurudev came to the Philippines in the year 1999, just before the Y2K thing. So we were going for a morning walk in Manila, and on the sidewalk, someone had before the cement, you know, they have the cement block, one after the other. So this had been recently poured, fresh cement, but before it dried, someone wrote some words in the cement. And as Gurudev was walking, it was just near to the front of the property of the temple. So as Gurudev was walking and coming back to the temple after his morning walk, there was these words written in the sidewalk. And Srila Gurudev stopped and he looked at them. And then he said, God is love. Did you hear me tell this story before? He spoke that. God is love. That's what was written there. And then Gurudev said, and love is God. Is it not very simple? God is love, and love is God. But from the perspective of Vaishnava philosophy, now you really go deep into those 3 little words. How is God love? Because the first verse of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of Rupa Goswami is the introductory verse which is explaining Krishna. Here it says, Akil Rasamrita Murti. What does that mean? Akil Rasamrita Murti. What does Murti mean?
Form.
Form. What is Akil? Akil means full, complete. All. Akil means all. And Rasa Amrita, that we should know, we've been talking about it, means what?
Eternal rest.
Huh?
Eternal rest.
Nectar, also eternal. So Krishna, here Rupa Goswami has begun the entire work with these words, Akil Rasamrita Murti. Krishna is the form of all nectar eternal rasa. That's what he is. He's the embodiment. He is the very form of rasa. And then Rupa Goswami begins to tell in the remainder of that verse how Krishna, by his attractive features, has attracted Taraka, Palli, and ultimately Srimati Radharani. Radha Vidur Jayati. All victory to him, who by his form of all rasa has attracted and subdued all the other gopis. You see? Because he's the form of all rasa. That's what this means, God is love. Because rasa is love. So then, when Gurudev saw that, he repeated it, and then he added his own version of it by reversing it. To what?
Love is God.
Yeah. Love is God. How do we understand that? Love is God.
This is a wild attempt,
Mm.
but it's described that there's
Like?
three things. There's Radha and Krishna,
Mm-hmm.
and there's Prem. And the most supreme of all three is Prem. Prem controls everything.
Yes. So, who is the embodiment of all love to the highest degree and extent? How is she?
Because she is Krishna's, she's the Ladini Shakti. She is the complete pleasure potency, and her love is for Krishna is the highest expression of love.
What is she made from?
Mahabhav.
What is Mahabhav?
It is the supreme, highest, greatest expression of Bhav, of that pure love for Krishna.
Yes. Mahabhav. Different, that's what we learn in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu later on, studying the different stages. And then in Madhurya Rasa, then that has gone into in very great depth. How Gopi Bhav, Gopi Prem in Madhurya Rasa becomes ultimately Mahabhav. So Srimati Radhika, her form is made of love. We have to try to understand that. Our bodies, and anyone's body that we see in this material world, even up to the demigods and everything, what is it made out of? It's made out of material elements, subtle or gross. But her transcendental form is made of Mahabhav. She is the highest, purest, supreme essence of all love. Her very form is made of that. That's why when Krishna wants to taste Srimati Radhika's prem, he has to take her golden color, because that is her Mahabhav. and all of her moods. So, yes, the basic principle of the living condition is that we have a general propensity to love someone. I remember there was a song in the 60s. Here we go, Vyala Prabhu. What was the title of that song? It was one of the top selling songs in the 60s, around 1966 or 7.
All you need is love.
No, that's a little later, but that's also a good one. But I'm thinking of something else, because it says the basic principle of the living condition is that we have a general propensity to love someone, and no one can live without loving someone else.
I want to know what love is.
No, that's way later. That's way later.
I don't care what they say, I won't stay in the world with that.
Actually, we could sit here and probably, okay? There's one that was from San Francisco rock group.
When the truth is found to be lies, and all the world around you is, don't you need somebody to love?
Yes. Don't you need somebody to love? Don't you want somebody to love?
You better
Find somebody. No, that's the last one that is something. So, yeah.
Grace.
Yeah. So that was a perfect explanation. You need. This is the basic principle. And no one can live without loving someone else. This propensity is present in every living being, even an animal. Even an animal like a tiger has this loving propensity, at least in a dormant stage. And it is certainly present in the human beings. The missing point, however, is where to repose our love so that everyone can be
satisfied,
happy. That's the thing. Where? The missing point. At the present moment, the human society teaches one to love his country, or his family, or his personal self. But there is no information where to repose the loving propensity so that everyone can become happy. That missing point is Krishna. And the nectar of devotion teaches us how to stimulate our original love for Krishna and how to be situated in that position where we can enjoy our blissful life. In the primary stage, a child loves his parents, then his brothers and sisters. And as he daily grows up, he begins to love his family, his society, community, country, nation, or even the whole human society. But the loving propensity is not satisfied, even by loving all human society. That loving propensity remains imperfectly fulfilled until we know who is the supreme beloved. Our love can be fully satisfied only when it is reposed in Krishna. This theme is the sum and substance of the nectar of devotion, which teaches us how to love Krishna in 5 different transcendental mellows. So we'll finish the rest of this tomorrow. What do you think of that? Is that not amazing what we just heard? Isn't that pretty amazing? All the solution to the whole problems of material existence is in this one preface. And unless you hear this from the authoritative source, you cannot know this. And unless you practice it, you cannot experience it. But here it is, the key.
Is this where he says our love expands like a ray of light?
Yeah, I think so. It comes after that. Like a ray of light expands. How beautiful is that, huh? This is it. This is it. Hare Krishna. Gaur Premanande. Jai Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Shri Rupanula Guru Varga ki jai. Jai Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Nectar of devotion ki jai. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu ki jai. Jai Shri Gaur Nitai ki jai. Nitai Gaur Pranama ki jai. Vansha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhu Bheva Patitanam